What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Tide Talk. It's Thursday, August 8th, and we're here to recap RIFC's 1-0 road loss to Indy and to preview the upcoming Derby match. So, cozy up, crack a beer, and let's dive into this one. So if you're watching now, please take a second to subscribe and Apple Podcasts. And if you listen on one of those, we'd really appreciate it if you took a minute to leave us a 5-star rating and a short review, as it helps more people find our podcast. If you're not already using the RIFC Club Collector app, click the link in this episode description to get on that site and go enter the code Tide Talk, all one word, to get a free pack to add to your collection. There's another Tide Talk exclusive code floating around, so go watch one of our live shows from Providence Brewing, and you can get a plethora of packs to add to your collection. Pretty special one tonight, as I'm joined by my good friend Ryan. We've also got Scott, aka Mouse, aka RIFC UK, in the house. He'll be on camera shortly setting up his flag. He was very worried about his visual presentation, so you will see the tall Welshman pretty soon. But Ryan, another awesome time at Providence Brewing last night. It was the club's official watch party. Pretty cool. The club posted out. We made the club's post, so that was pretty cool to see. So
that almost made me feel better about this game.
Yeah, a little bit. A lot of good stuff's brewing. A lot of good things brewing with that partnership, though. So I was very honored to be able to do it again, and it was just a great time.
Yeah, and like you're saying, like shout out to the people at Providence Brewing. We definitely feel very at home there, and just a great group that is really trying to support and get behind this club. So you can't ask for more than that.
For sure. Scott, do we have you on audio yet, or are you still finagling?
I am on audio, but I am not ready to be on video, I'm afraid.
All right, so we haven't heard from you since you hosted the Call Hog Corner last week. So how's everything going with you, my friend? Other than
it's
flag troubles.
Yeah, my flag troubles are pretty bad. Well, up until yesterday, it was going swimmingly, and now it really does feel like we've taken a bit of a downer. Last night was not comfortable by any means, and it makes it even worse that the referee was blatantly on our side. So it's a bit of a difficult sort of pill to swallow there. At least it was one, but if that's the best thing that I can say about that match, then we did do, pretty badly.
I definitely have to agree with that. Let's start like we always do with the lineup. We did see 6 changes. We figured there would be some rotation, and I know the 6 changes, the rotation, I don't know what the word I even want to use for it, but the outlook on this game, or just set up for this game, will be a highly debated or highly talked about topic here on Tide Talk tonight. The first change was Jackson Lee and net. We saw a back line of Stoneman, Nodarse, and Gabi Alves, and Colin Smith. So had that weird, kind of flexy thing going on there. And Karifa Yao, I'm sorry. So it was the traditional. Thought mob's all fucked up right now. It was Yao, Stoneman, Nodarse as your back 3, Smith and Alves as your wing backs, with Brito, McGlynn, Ibarra, Doyle, and Williams rounding it out. So 6 changes. Doyle comes in. We see McGlynn come in, Brito, Smith, and Gabi Alves, and Jackson Lee. So out of those 6 changes, Ryan, 4 of them have failed to see the pitch in any kind of regularity of late, whether by hook or crook or injury or whatever it may be. But that was pretty concerning. And I think when we saw this live at Providence Brewing, I know I tampered down my score expectations. I went with a 1-0 RIFC win. I thought this was a team we could have beaten comfortably with the 11 that we've seen, the unchanged 11 that we've seen in the last couple ones. But as Matt Hand says in the chat, 6 changes was way too many, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first big issue with this whole thing is I had to change my entire club collector lineup. Not a single one of them started, which was brutal. But yeah, I was extremely disappointed in the fact that we made this many changes. We always talked about this stretch of 3 games in this 1 week as this kind of pod in this section of the season that Kano could kind of treat it as one section. And to me, there's kind of 2 different ways that you can rotate. One way is you just almost throw it, almost the entire 11 goes out more or less, which is kind of what we saw last night. You'll see this happen with a lot of cup runs, cup games. We saw it in the US Open Cup earlier this year for RIFC. But the other way you could have rotated the squad is to do kind of 2 to 3 changes per match to keep people fresh, sure. Little earlier subs here and there. And I think we saw, like you said, a bunch of players who have not been seeing the pitch and have not been seeing the pitch together because there was absolutely zero chemistry. There was zero chemistry, and they all look a lot of rust on that. The players out there.
I'm glad you mentioned the chemistry because I think that's been a strong suit of this
Yep.
this run of this unbeaten run. You've seen the link ups really start to solidify and players really learn how to play together. But that, like you mentioned, it just was not there. Scott, what was your thoughts when you saw this initial lineup?
Well, I was really pleased to see Gabriel Alves there, and I'm somewhat disappointed. It really feels like he was played in a position that he hasn't been played in before, whereas before he's been a primarily defensive wing back. It felt like he was a winger yesterday, and nobody seemed to want to get the ball out to him. I think we had other options in similar areas, and we tended to go down the right rather than the left. I get what you mean by the chemistry thing, but I really don't like it as an excuse. These are professional footballers. They train with each other every week. I know that chemistry does make a difference. And if you're doing the same play with the same player over and over again, it's going to be a bit more slick. But that performance cannot be excused by the fact that, oh, well, we don't play this formation very often. You should be able to proficiently perform with whoever's on the pitch, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. You get paid. You're a professional. You should be able to as well. Tyler says, choosing to believe yesterday was a combination of squad rotation, fatigue, and looking ahead, all against a good team on the road in a match they had to have. So let's talk about the giant elephant in the room and tackle the narrative that's going on with this fan base right now, Ryan. There's a lot of people out there saying this was an okay match to drop points in. And I know we talked off air, and you and I feel exactly the same, pretty fiery, pretty passionately about this. This is a team that we were chasing down for a home playoff spot, and a team that was struggling to score goals. To rotate 6 players is, I think, just beyond arrogant to think that you can go in there and get a result, especially with, like I mentioned, 4 out of the 6 who just have not seen regular playing time. But to rotate 6 and not do it in those pods of like 2 here, 2 there, I think was, it's tough because we've been singing the praises of Kano on here and coach of the month. But I think, whether this was maybe the RIFC front office getting involved and saying, hey, we really want to prioritize Saturday, or if this was Kano's way of rotating the squad and it just backfired, this was just the absolute incorrect way to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this was the biggest strategic blunder of the season by far.
Sure.
Not even close. There's been big debate, as you've mentioned, about should we be prioritizing the Hartford match or the Detroit match or the Indy match? I have been very much of the opinion that the Detroit and Indy match are significantly more important here. Detroit sits 1 place above us in the standings, and Indy sits on the 4th spot. That's really the only attainable home playoff spot that we have left. If we had won last night, we would have gone within, I think, 1 point or 2 points of them in that standing. We would have been in about 5th place. So I just can't reiterate enough how much I disagree with Hartford being a more important match than getting up to 5th place in the standings and being in striking distance. I don't think that we should be focusing on punching down at the 10th place team at a home match. I think we had a very beatable Indy 11 last night who are on an awful run of form, and we could have really taken advantage of it to solidify our place in that mid to upper pack of this league. We are at a point now where we have to scrape by to now keep ourselves in that 7th to 8th range. And now we do have to worry about people like Hartford, where again, we could have solidified ourselves. The thing that bothers me is you hear the rationale behind why Hartford is the more important match of, it's for the fans. It's the derby. We're trying to create an environment here. You know what does all of those things? A home playoff match. There is nothing that what's going to happen with Hartford on Saturday. Like whatever happens on August 10th is not as important on what's going to happen that first round of the playoffs. Packing out Burns Stadium for a first round playoff match, which also gives you a better chance to advance in said playoffs, will give you much better momentum, much more publicity, and much more chances of selling things out as you look into Tidewater. So again, I strategically can't disagree with people saying that we should have tossed, treated the Indy game the way we did last night. Like you said, it was arrogant. I thought it was disrespectful. And I think it was just a complete strategic blunder. We also saw last night a thing that I think Kano was banking on was, hey, if it isn't going well, I can bring people in throughout the course of the second half. We didn't see it work in the Open Cup. We didn't see it work last night again. It was quite frankly a mess. And I can't be more disappointed in what our strategy in our club, what we did last night.
Before I go to Scott, I want to come with 2 points back on that. And the Derby piece almost seems like, from a club perspective, it's a propaganda piece to try to get more people who are not necessarily soccer fans to buy into a local rivalry, to kind of adopt the club and get into the fan culture piece of it. And I get that, because you want to put butts in seats. But like you said, you get another home game if you challenge for a home playoff spot. So like, you're getting even more revenue for the club. So like, I would push for those things. I think that going and looking in for, prioritizing this as the big derby, and we got to go beat Hartford. Like you said, it's punching down. Hartford has been a shit organization for years within this league. They will continue to be. Their supporters club is a joke. The stadium is a joke. Like the whole
memes are a joke.
atmosphere, their memes, they got some food Instagrammer doing a special menu. Like, I don't even know who that person is. Like, don't even care. So like, they're very much set up as a gimmicky organization, and we don't need to be that. We have already have a better supporters culture than them. So why not go out for the wins? Why not prioritize the wins and try to get yourself locked into that upper echelon of the table, like you mentioned?
And I just want to put the elephant in the room here. What happens if we then don't go out and beat Hartford, guys? Like, then we just put ourselves in an absolute shit corner where we took all the momentum that we've been building over the past few months, and now we're again scrapping for that eighth playoff spot. I think there's a lot of arrogance going on, both with the decision made last night, but the way people are talking about this Hartford match. It's not going to be some walk in the park. I do think they are the weaker team between Indy and Hartford, and I again would have prioritized Indy, but I just cannot reiterate enough that this puts us in such a weird spot that I think is going to make people a lot more uncomfortable than they need to be.
Well, I also would have looked at the two away matches of Indy and Detroit as, Detroit's going to be a much more hostile environment. So like, Indy's the one that, if we're going to draw one of them, I would have probably picked Detroit or airhold Detroit as the draw. And if you're going to try to fully go in and win one of them, it would have been Indy for me.
Totally agree. And yeah, the Detroit result was fine by me. Again, we played the 11 that we expected. But again, like, why not rotate two guys here? Why not rotate one of the wing backs so you could have played a Turnbull in this game? Or a Quizera in this game. We've seen them be real. Indies really struggled against left wing backs, especially this year. Why not have Quizera fresh and ready and play someone like a Colin Smith last game? I
also know that Scott's very excited. We had Gabi back, and it's great seeing Gabi back in there. But to see his first bout of action be a 45-minute sub off, I found interesting, right? He's been battling a knee injury, trying to get back in. So like, I would have liked to have seen him kind of eased in, maybe come on as a sub, maybe not necessarily start in that situation. But Matt Hand says in the chat too, I'm a little on the fence. I still think the derby is super important. I get that, but I think the club is prioritizing that, to us. So like I said,
we don't know. To be clear, we don't know that.
I don't know how much of this was, this was Kano's plan of rest and rotation and doing a more wholesale style versus the 2 to 3 in different pods and different groups, like Ryan mentioned. But we are fans. That's what we do. We talk, we spitball about it, and interested to get your takes on this, Scott. How this looked of the optics of these 6 changes, ahead of a derby match that's being built up so publicly.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that they are prioritizing Hartford. The problem is we can bitch and moan about it, but if both of those went our way, we would have said, what a great move! Wow, these guys have got it down. We did only lose 1-0, so we were a couple of good plays and a couple of good defensive plays away from this being a master plan. If we lose to Hartford, this will be an unmitigated failure, obviously.
And like Tyler just added in the chat too, Scott, Hartford won't roll over. They're playing pretty stingy football right now. They're kind of a tough nut to crack. So it's not a cakewalk that people are assuming it is.
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it, in football, that sometimes the hardest matches that you'll ever have are the matches against people in a relegation zone. I know we don't have pro rel, but the 4 spaces that are in the league that aren't playoff positions are effectively our relegation zone. And Hartford being second to last now, is it minus 16 goal difference, something horrible like that? They have everything to fight for and they've got nothing to lose. So yeah, I don't think this is going to be an easy match. And I think yesterday against Indy, we saw, a huge amount of subs. Those weren't planned, in my opinion. I don't think Kano planned to completely change, the format of the game. We did that because we were the worst side and we were getting beaten. So, did he have a plan? Maybe. Was it a good one? Not particularly.
Right. I just go back to Herm Edwards' immortal press conference in the New York Jets. You play to win the game, and I don't think the game was played to be won last night. It's just it left a sour taste in my mouth with all this good run of form and positive juju we've had going, positive chemistry we've had going. It wasn't a game that you could just throw away, like people are saying. This was not a throwaway game. This was a mid-table to upper echelon 6-pointer and could have gotten us really solidified in the hunt for a home playoff match. So unfortunately, it was not treated that way, and that's black and white. It just was not treated that way. So let's take a look at why what happened and what kind of went wrong. First half, Rhode Island FC did outpossess Indy 54%, but were outshot 9-4. Just one shot on target for the Tide. 0 big chances for each squad. 95 accurate passes for Indy. So that just showed, how lopsided the stats were in the eye test one with this, because Indy kind of was the better team from opening kickoff throughout, at least in my opinion. The best chance came for Rhode Island off a beautiful flicked on ball from JJ to Brito, hit a one-timer in front of Doyle, who crashed it in and hit it off the post, and the goalie did make a nice diving, sprawling save on that. So let's take a look at that.
More than capable group that's on the field.
Absolutely. Just look at this build-up. One touch from J.J. Williams sends Brito in, and a perfect one-touch ball across the box that Hunter Salt has to go full extension on to keep it out of the back of the net.
Probably important that we point out that Hunter is 6 foot.
So really good build up there, and like Scott mentioned, he's not fully buying the lack of chemistry piece, because that's a beautiful ball from JJ to Brito out wide, who very rarely gets into that spot for this team, who puts in a great ball, and it's Doyle being opportunistic and tackling that one and attacking and almost getting the goal, but just couldn't convert. Obviously, goalie makes a nice save, but those chances were few and far between, and we ultimately paid the price as Indy scored in the 34th minute from a goal from Guenzotti, and we'll take a look at that.
This will be a thorn in the side of the Indy 11. Now a little more space for Whatton. Guenzotti!
Oh, my goodness.
Sebastian Guenzotti in his 201st USL Championship appearance adds to his all since June 1st against the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. It is his 4th of the season, and for a second time in as many matchups, the Indy 11 have taken the early lead against Rhode Island.
So you look at that, it's a throw-in. The goal itself is pretty inexcusable, I think, as much as the 6 changes that we saw. Frank, again, kind of in no man's land, a little lackadaisical on the marking, not really at anyone. Seemed like just a communication breakdown in who was marking who on that one, or not being first to step to it. So kind of a frustrating goal to see, especially the first one in the match, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, this is funny because it brings a couple things that we've talked about recently. Number one, I love the offsides throw-in. And again, people fall for it for God knows why. And unfortunately, we did this time. And then, yeah, I've praised Frank and his growth this season. But one thing we've consistently seen from him, I think we talked about this last week as well, is he sometimes can be very lackadaisical on getting back. There doesn't seem to be the sense of urgency, the kind of alarm bells ringing up. Oh, I should go close down this cross. And he kind of will like saunter back and then not get in front of it. Beautiful volley from them. You got to give credit where credit is due. But at the same time, I think there were many moments on that play. And also there were many moments leading up to this where they had a couple close chances, and we just never seemed to want to wake up and, get back to the game.
It really feels also like if we're given 2 feet of space, it isn't enough. Whereas if they're given 2 feet of space, that's ample space for them to create something really dangerous. And as you said, Ryan, that should have been a close down easily. That cross should never have come in. And if it was, it should have been hindered. The people, the 2 Indy players who were ready to receive it should have been being man-marked, because that was clearly our strategy. We were man-marking, we just weren't doing it well. Both of those things are poor. And it wasn't that bad yesterday, but it also feels very much like there are a few defenders where when a shot's about to go off or a cross is about to go off, they're not diving in there. They're not putting their body on the line. They're sort of, jutting away from it. You're professional footballers. I don't care if you get hit in the face or nuts or both. You're being paid for this. What are you saving yourself for? And it's this sort of attitude that I think is costing us goals. And yeah, as you said, it's just inaccurate. It's not not close enough for us to even be in with a chance of winning in these sort of games. Because yeah, when we give them 2 feet, they create a yard. When we get given 2 feet, our touch is 5 foot off. You know, it's not good enough.
Like
Thank
Andrew
you for
Quadro
using feet,
says,
by the way. Really appreciate
yeah,
it.
look at that, man. Like Andrew Quadro says in the chat, each game has a goal conceded where you could easily argue that the defense was too lackadaisical. It's been a common thing.
Well, it's also funny because we were honestly seeing the opposite happen for so long, where we were being so over aggressive that
Sure.
we were giving up goals as well. So someday we'll find that balance.
No, right on. So I think that. Go ahead, Scott.
Sorry, just one of our Tide Talk, I'd say co-hosts. Don't know if we can give him that. Kevin has said, Scott, your flag is wrinkled. Shape the fuck up. I'd like to say that I take this flag at least twice a week to my local pub, which is RIFC UK HQ. Fuck you. I'm not ironing it 3 times a week.
I also saw, Scott, that there's an Indy 11 UK Twitter handle out there too. So if we get them next year, when we get them, hopefully you can talk some shit and battle out with them.
I'll see if I can locate him and we can have a fight or something.
There you go. But that's pretty much that pretty much wrapped it up for the first half, at least in my thoughts. And I know, and I'll tease it out now, that Ryan's got slides, so make sure you
just a couple,
you buckle in, a few short slides for this one. But when the
Matt,
second half,
can I sprinkle a little bit more shit on that first half? So you mentioned the accurate passes. Just to be clear, in my little field tilt love, 74% of the accurate passes in the first half were in our side of the pitch. That is just like absolutely brutal. You could see it in the way that the average position was for our team in the match. It basically was if we were playing a flat back 5. We were pinned so far back, we could just never get out of our half. Again, we were outshot 9-4. Touches in the opposition box, they had 12. We only had 3. So we were letting them just camp out, pass around in our box, get a lot of touches, a lot of shots off in our box. And it was just really, really, really poor performance overall.
Right. I think lackadaisical is the word I really like from this one that we've seen from a lot of different people. And as we mentioned with the rotation, the squad rotation and all of that, it was almost like, oh, let's try to throw something on and see what sticks too, as Jose Quezera comes on at the half, as well as Zachary Harival. The rest of the subs in the second half were Clay Holstad, Noah Fuson, Chico, and Turnbull. So it was like, I wanted to sit these guys. I wanted to rest all these guys, but like this shit's not working. Let's throw them all back in there. And it was interesting. It really kind of changed things. Not so much for the better. Nothing really, helped us. Nothing really helped us get a foothold in this one. But the second half, I thought was just frustrating to watch because it's like we were chasing shadows throughout the whole one. And Scott.
Yeah, I felt exactly the same way. It didn't feel like the last couple of times where we've gone down first, where we've conceded first. I've actually been quietly confident the last couple of times where we've gone down.
I think I said to Ryan and Kevin at the brewery at the 60th minute, I said, we can actually go on and win this one 2-1 still. Like we have the firepower to do it, but like the subs and the system just didn't jive, didn't change.
No, it didn't feel like we had a final product. And what's more, our defense, even with the changes, it still felt like it had massive gaps in it. The midfield wasn't as creative. We weren't, there was a few bits of, nice football, those quick 1-2s. Gabby Alves had a nice one as well, but they were really few and far between, very sparse in our game. And it really didn't give me any sort of confidence that we were going to do anything with that. And I didn't have that spark in me, as a viewer thinking, oh, it's coming, because it wasn't coming. I'm sure, Ryan, you have the stats, but do the stats bear that out? What were our, big chances like? What were our shots on goal like?
Spoiler, bad. Matt, if you want to go to the slide.
Sure.
So yeah, let me just put in slideshow quick. So this is like the little data graph. So you'll see our XG, we only mustered up 0.46, so not even like half a goal. They were at 1.3. Their shots they led us in shots 18-10. Our expected threat was minus 0.1. So we were actively making it harder to score throughout the game, which is honestly shocking and incredible. You'll see that we won the possession battle 58%, but we didn't do anything with it. They had all the field tilt. They won the positional battle there. We also just were not being able to string any passes together. We were passing at 74%, but also like they were breaking it up. They had 10 passes per defensive action, which is pretty incredible. So just in general, also we Cross FC was back at 3% there. So like just in general, it was just so sloppy. And I think one interesting thing about this is the area of the pitch that Kano didn't change was his defense. And I think the rationale there was, hey, if I keep those 3 defenders in there, they've been playing well, they've jived together, maybe we can kind of hold them to either 0 or 1 goals, which worked in a way. But the problem was we then could never possess and accurately make anything with the ball, which then just brings all the pressure back on that same defense. And, while they've been playing well, they're not miracle workers out there. So yeah, you'll see here, the blue here is Indy. They just had absolutely all the threat, all the momentum. In terms of XG along the way, again, they just were constantly just ticking up, creating chances. We just were not mustering much up the entire way. So overall, just a piss poor eye test performance and a piss poor stat test performance.
Like you mentioned, pinned back throughout on this one. And
I mean, you can see it like the way that our back line here is just like in a flat line. Usually you'll see our wing backs be kind of almost more part of the midfield / attack, sure. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people all behind this defensive line here, which is like absolutely brutal. And then as you'll see their team, their defensive line height is almost 20 meters higher than ours throughout this match. So they basically were camped out on like the halfway line and just saying, okay, see what you guys can do. So just disgusting performance from the team.
I know you mentioned the cross rate, and I actually found it funny that we abandoned the wide play for a while in this one. Everything seemed to be route one and try to go up the middle, and all of those balls, and as if you were anywhere near even at the brewery, all those balls were overcooked and overhit and just played forward in hopes somebody would be up there. And I don't know why that stylistically changed so much with kind of how we've been playing. I guess it was due to who was at wing back, but like Scott, you mentioned a little bit earlier, we weren't going out wide to Gabi at all. Everything was kind of coming from the right hand side, and then it looked like a right to center over the top too long, and we just couldn't get on the end of anything.
I wonder what's the sort of upshot of switching keepers here. How do you think that impacted us? Because I noticed, very, very contentious. I did notice that Lee was playing it out from the back a lot more and not using that cannon of a leg that he has. Mm-hmm. And given the fact that JJ was being played, quite in a quite advanced position, I was expecting to see some of those lofty long balls. And I think it would have been the right call, given how the fact that, as Evan has pointed out, Lee
that would have been the much better. That would have been the much better over the top route one progression than the midfielders overcooking balls, at least in my opinion.
Guys, I got to be the guy. If you want to go back to the slides here. All right, so I decided to fucking poke the bear this morning because I was very annoyed at the distribution performance. So on the left here, you will see Koke Vegas. And on the right here, you'll see Jackson Lee. So you see that they actually this whole narrative that Koke is not like a good shot stopper. I don't think either of them are particularly amazing. They both have a 65.2% state percentage, the exact same. I will admit that this does not take into account how difficult the shots were to save. So the XG saved and all that might be a bit different, but this is really the big area here, this distribution down here. So you'll see that Koke, his pass accuracy in general, 70.8. He's right up there with the top keepers in the league. His accurate long balls per match are right around the same as Jackson, but the accuracy is so much higher with Koke. He's clipping at almost 46%, which is like second highest in the league, versus Jackson, who's at this like 36%. So with the whole discussion and why I bring this up, and I think it's funny. So I was looking at Jackson Lee's distribution last night, and I did see that we were significantly lower on the accurate long balls we normally have per match. So we had 21 accurate long balls at a 38% completion rate. We actually averaged the 4th most in the league at 30.6 per match, but we are 46% accuracy there. So we're usually much more accurate and we complete many more. So I was looking at Jackson here, and he went long 26 times with 12 accurate. Koke in the last 3 matches only went long 14, 10, and 16 times. So he went long much, much more. I think it felt different because we were just under so much pressure. He was constantly, he had the ball a ton. His touches in this match, I think he had more than Brito, Colin Smith, and like McGlynn combined. He had like 54 touches or something absolutely insane. So again, I have always preferred Koke it is because of his distribution. And I think it was a bit on display last night. I also do think, though, I want to caveat everything I just said with, I actually think keeper is the one position you shouldn't be rotating often. I think that is like the one position that it actually does cause a bit of damage anytime you're swapping and changing.
I think especially with this whole modern style of trying to play
Yes.
it out the back more, if you have someone who's not getting that pressure normally in matches, and obviously training and practice, but you're not seeing that pressure week in and week out in matches, it's different.
Yeah, and I mean, not to always make this about Arsenal, but Arsenal kind of had a thing last year with two keepers. Aaron Ramsdale, who I always thought very highly of. I was shocked he bought another keeper. He then started coming in for these like random sub appearances, and he was not remotely the same person. His like psyche was a bit off. He struggled with his distribution massively because he just looked rusty. He looked unconfident. And again, I think of all the positions, rotation I think impacts goalkeepers more than most. So again, another like big risk looking ahead to this Hartford match that I don't know we should have taken.
Right. And it just unsettles things. It rocks the boat, if you will, as far as how smooth things have been going. And, I think it goes back to our earlier point that this was not one you could throw away. This was more about keeping that form, staying hot, staying fresh, and keeping guys in the right positions to do well. Final stats for this one were 58% possession for Rhode Island FC, but not a lot of that coming in the opponent's half of the field, as Ryan's infographics there showed. We were outshot 18-10. Just wild. We were pinned back so deep, and you can credit Indy's wingers for that, but we just weren't able to advance the ball or get it even out of there. 0 big chances for each team despite the goal. 153 accurate passes for Indy at 66%, 261 at 74% for Rhode Island. 24 fouls on Indy to 13 for Rhode Island. Like Scott mentioned, the referee was trying to help us, and there were a lot of soft ones in there. We did have 8 corners to 4. I felt like corners were the only thing we could, potentially pose a threat on, and we went back to go in front post while everyone was lined up at the back post. So we've seen that kind of 2 out of the last 3 games. It's been an interesting watch, at least with that part. But any final thoughts on this performance, Scott, to kind of put a bow on it, or any other complaints or gripes that we missed?
No, not really. It really was just all bad, really, all encompassingly bad. There was not a lot of silver linings here. Gabby played, and we know that he's fit. That's lovely. But if we're not going to use him to any sort of potential, then it's a bit moot. I've been going quite quickly off Khalifa Yao. I've seen him make some, pretty bad mistakes as of late, and this game unfortunately didn't buck the trend. No, not really.
I want to ask you about Yao there. Now that you brought him up, I look at a lot of his.
I thought you were going to ask him how we actually should pronounce his name. So that was going to be the start.
Sorry, Yao.
I look at a lot of Yao's mistakes, or like kind of where he's getting into position before a goal, as trying to cover for Frank in some of his lackadaisical marking or lack of marking in general. But I think Yao kind of gets the spotlight put a little bit more on him because Frank's out of position a lot, and Khalifa's the one coming over to try to, make a last-ditch tackle or remedy his misposition.
I think that's entirely valid. I think he is our last line of defense and is often put in a position where, it's 2-on-1 or it's even 1-on-1, but they've got the momentum. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination that his share of the mistakes are burdened by him alone. It's obviously going to fall to him given his position. But there just have been a few times where, again, using the word lackadaisical, it does feel like he's shutting off a lot of the time, where he's just sort of seeing a guy, run past him and just forgetting about him, that he's not a man to be marked. That's cost us a few goals just in the last few games. And yeah, I'm sure he'll get better. I'm sure this is just a dip in form, because I don't think he's a bad player, and I think he's done exceedingly well for us. But the last few games have been a bit testing.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to we talked about this when Stoneman came back, and I think a lot of us thought Stoneman would take his place back as the center back, which he was to start the season. And I do wonder if Kano might have a second thought about that now. I think them as a back 3 unit have performed pretty well. But at the same time, like, Grant is that veteran presence. He is a bit more of an organizer, you might think. So maybe having him between the two of them, he can try to help, dictate that a bit. But yeah, and also I think he's just a better passer than Yao. I don't think he's spectacular, but I think he is a better passer than Yao. And again, I always have thought that your center back, you want him to have a bit of speed, but also really be able to distribute from there.
Right. I think that's well said. Any other final thoughts on this one, Ryan?
Just to, again, continue to sprinkle just how bad this was. You mentioned 0 chances created. We had 55% passing accuracy in the final third for this match. This is actually not even on these slides. We had 10 shots. 6 of them were outside the box. We also allowed Indy 13 shots within in our box. We have averaged 8 allowed in our unbeaten run, and that is also with 13 in the box from Louisville and Memphis. So a lot of these big wins, we've allowed only like 6 or so shots within the box. We've been doing a great job stifling people, keeping them outside the box. And if they do get a shot off, we've been blocking a ton. Last night had absolutely none of those qualities that we've gotten to see from this team. So yeah, this was big time early season performance between the attack looking like they just met each other yesterday and the defense just allowing the other team to kind of do what they want in our box and in our half. So yeah, just one to forget. Hopefully the boys can put this one behind them for Saturday. But in general, just I can't reiterate enough how much I disagree with the strategy of how we went about this match. And the thing too that bothers me is the thing you're hoping to see when you do these big rotations is you see some players try to kind of
elevate their game
and say, I want to be in that starting 11 for Saturday. And it just seemed like none of that happened. The only players I was like impressed with was like someone like a Clay. Clay came on and he was like, give me the fucking ball. I want to try to put this right.
Get on my back, boys.
Yeah, get on my back. Where did I have it here? Yeah, Clay, in 29 minutes, he had almost... Well. Yeah, he had almost as many touches as Connor did in 45. He had 1 key pass. Connor had 0. Noah Fuson came on at wingback. He had the same amount of accurate passes as Colin Smith in 22 minutes versus the 68 minutes Colin Smith was on. So it was really a lot of those starters came on and said, yep, this is my shirt. This is my job. And I'm going to show you why I do that every week. Again, it didn't work because everything was so out of sorts and so disjointed to start. But yeah, just brutal. And I actually, just one other thing, I don't think Chico's a great sub.
No.
Like of the two, I'd almost rather. Yeah, and I think he had like 3 touches or something crazy in like 10 minutes. Like he just, I think he, yeah, like you said, needs to grow into the game, and it might be something to think about. If like, hey, do we start? If we're going to start one of the two of them, maybe we start with Chico, and then JJ can be that option. We don't have as much data on him as a sub, but
sure.
Yep. Just to wrap it all up, just terrible. Terrible.
I'll go back to the point, like we mentioned, like we started with, like you added back to there, that the whole throwaway notion of the game, it boggles my mind. It pisses me off based on my Euro snob team, and that's the mentality of that team. So I don't want it to be the mentality.
Hard agree.
Of my fucking local team too. So anyone saying like, oh yeah, it's fine that we lost. It was acceptable to throw the drop points there. Not acceptable. Not okay. Absolute bullshit. We should have went out there to try to win this game. We should have been pressing for that home playoff match. It was there. It was on the table. It was there for the taking, and we laid an absolute dud of it.
It's funny. It's funny with this. I was trying to come up with an analogy about how I could give a shit if Arsenal beat Spurs in like February if something happens, but I couldn't find the right equivalent for like the playoffs in the Premier League. So I couldn't capitalize on the opportunity to kind of shit on Spurs, but you did it for me, which was great.
It's fine. It is what it is. We're going to kick it around to the fan interactions. So we've got some takes on Twitter. Evan said, if I say anything, I will be banned. Would it be his first time? Probably wouldn't be his last time. Nick Cipriani says, rough performance. It seemed like we obviously had the ability to score, just took our time way too much. One of my favorite words is fiddly fucking with the ball. I don't think this was...
Did I tell you that that's injected itself into my vocabulary? I've said it a couple times this week.
Yes. That's what Sun has done to me at times. But going over to the Discord, Leo O has good, taking advantage of how the game was being officiated, like Scott mentioned, the 23, 24 fouls, whatever it was, going down instead of trying to fight through clear contact. I personally hate flopping, but it's more frustrating when our opponent is being gifted an advantage because we'd rather fight through fouls. I can understand that. Bad having to sacrifice a potentially important playoff implication game, whether because it's the 3rd game in 8 days or whether for a derby, which is 4th game in 11 days. So Leo is on board with us. Having to sacrifice a potentially important playoff implication game. That's what it is. There's no 2 ways to spin it. That's 100% what happened. His ugly was bad back passes and attempts to play out from the back while under heavy pressure. Andrew H's 3 words were, what a snooze. Andrew Gomes had good, a fair number of starters getting rest for the importance of Saturday. No. I'm thumbs downing that one, Andrew. Bad continuous backwards passing without any initiative to push forward. That was because of all those subs. And ugly, a near 2-month unbeaten streak gone again because of those subs, at least in my opinion. We've also got Logan, who had the beer at Providence Brewing Company.
Attaboy, Logan.
Best Coast. Andrew's got a goal right now. The beer is very good there. His bad midweek games, I think it's what leads to this and leads to the rotation and all this debate. It is ugly as Fluffy Cowhog boy. He's got Kevin as his ugly. Kevin put in a long shift at the brewery yesterday, so I applaud the effort. I would maybe put that as good more than ugly, but Andrew Quadros, good. The effort was there all the way to the end. A lot of fight in this team. Was it though? Was the effort really fully there? I think maybe Clay coming on could have instilled that a little bit.
I don't think they didn't try. Like, I'm not gonna ever say that about them. They always try. It just was extremely ineffective.
Right. He's got bad defense, really struggled all match, struggled with the ball under pressure, struggled to maintain their shape, struggled with the marking. Yuck. Ugly, Jackson Lee's distribution. It's an automatic turnover if he doesn't have an easy pass to give, and his RIF3 was sloppy AF. He went edited on that, which was funny because Andrew was dropping them all day today. Tyler had good. The game is over. It is good that one is over. Bad. That game happened. Ugly, limping into the derby, and that heavy rotation is the reason for it. His RIFC and 3 is must smash Shartford. Brian Lucchesi says, good attempt at squad rotation. I'd have that as the ugly. I will say that would be more of my ugly camp. Bad.
Now, can we make sure we clarify our point on this? Because I know we have the same point. We don't dislike rotation. We don't like the full-blown rotate the entire team at once.
Wholesale.
Yes.
I to go back to that, 2 or 3 is a lot. I think 1 or 2 starters out, and then 1 or 2 more coming off at half. Totally acceptable if you want to stagger it that way for the Hartford match. He also had his bad energy going into the weekend. Ugly, the defense under pressure. RIFC in 3 Saturday, we ride. So thank you to everyone who wrote in on the Discord, on the socials. Make sure you check out for all of our post-match posts to get your takes heard on the air. Before we do switch to Hartford, we had some more post-match content come out today, so you can go check out Timmy's player ratings. He did a really good job with low-balling numbers today, as the performances deserved on that one. And the post-match beacon from Matt Hands is out to give his take on that. So we got 2 different blogs up on the website. Make sure you go give those a read if you have not already. Contributors are cranking out some really good work.
Yeah, and if you're like, holy shit, how do I keep up with all this Tide Talk content? If you go to our website, you can subscribe to our newsletter. We will batch it up probably twice a week on a normal week, a couple more times this week since there's so much going on. So we'll do a little pre-match one ahead of whoever playing next with all the pre-match content, and a post-match one after the game is up. So easy way to stay connected with us, as well as follow us on social, things like that. But trying to, bow tie that for you, give you maybe a couple little paragraphs about, the week, how it's going,
It's how we keep up with Tide Talk too, with all the stuff that's
I
going
need
on.
it sometimes. It's unbelievable.
All right, let's shift gears a bit. This match was, I think, clearly prioritized based on what we saw yesterday. Saturday, we have the derby against Hartford. Hartford has 1 win, 1 loss, and 3 draws in their last 5 out. It was a 2-2 draw at home versus Charleston, a 3-1 loss on the road in Pittsburgh, a 0-0 at home versus a pretty bad Phoenix Rising team right now, a 1-0 over Detroit City at home, and a 2-2 draw in Birmingham last time out. Scott, you're going to give us some Hartford. You're our Hartford expert tonight. As you know, some other people might like to talk to people from Hartford and get their thoughts on what they do, but that's not how we roll over here at Tide Talk. We get our views on Hartford from across the pond.
Well, I was just going to make up a load of things about Connecticut and Hartford more specifically, in some sort of comic fashion. But in my research for this, I did just Google facts about Hartford, and it turns out that the internet agrees. Hartford, in particular, is a shithole in a shithole state. Some of the things that I've learned just over the last week have been phenomenal. Really, though, truly. Did you know that Connecticut is Hartford, Connecticut, is the 46th worst state capital to live in?
All right.
Sorry, that is 46th best. It is 4 from bottom. If you're wondering, the worst is Trenton, New Jersey, which is about the only thing that the Connecticut Tourist Board has got going for it.
Yeah,
it's just we're not
better
Trenton.
than Trenton.
That should be it. That should be it. Welcome to Hartford. It's not Trenton. It's the only thing they've got going for it. It really truly is spectacular. For all of the educational establishments that they've got, they are one of the worst educated states in the entirety of the United States. That includes Alaska. It's crazy. They've got one of the lowest rates of bachelor's degrees. They've got some of the worst rates of employment. They've got some of the worst rates of literacy. They've got some of the worst income disparities, population decline, massive. It's really not going well for Connecticut, like at all.
A lot of this it makes sense when you read their comments on like Reddit and Twitter. It all kind of clicks now that you're saying this.
You must have been sniffing butts.
Truly. Seriously, some of the things. Just look up basically any metric.
Well, Scott, we have Sarah in the chat who says, as a graduate of Connecticut public schools, I agree. she agrees.
The football team itself sucks. Second to last in the league, third to last in the entire championship. They're doing very, very poorly. On FOTMob, I think they've got half of the amount of players that we do over 7 or above. It's really poor. It's really, really poor. Connecticut has 35,000 more French Canadians than Rhode Island does, which is, you are doing very badly. Per capita, they've got 4 times the amount than New York in the state. It's just going very badly for everybody in Connecticut. I think it's sort of reasonably foreseeable why New York don't want to be associated with them and why the rest of New England don't want to be associated with them. I think I might have mentioned this last time, but I've done a little bit more research as well. This New Haven pizza, it's disgusting. It's vile. It's a cultural abomination. It's the sick bastard love child of an illegitimate state that is trying very hard to assimilate itself between 2 areas that desperately don't want to be assimilated with. I have a lot to say about Connecticut now.
I know the New Haven pizza is a big thing, but I'm more of a New York style guy myself, so I don't get the whole craze. It's just not. It's not me. It doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, it's no amount of, did you know Mark Twain lived here is going to make up for the fact that it's a 10th-rate 2-bit state with nothing to offer.
Although
to anybody,
Fluffy is a New Haven sympathizer, as he's saying in the chat, pretty much.
I'm sorry, I can't buy it. I really can't. Even the abbreviation CT, I thought it stood for something else. There is certainly an abbreviation with the first and last letter that is very descriptive of the people who live there. The Whalers are dead. Hartford Athletics go in there. I think that they are desperately trying to cling to that legacy. And I think they will. It's just going to be in the fact that they're going to leave. They're going to fold. And sooner rather than later, going to be a distant memory. That is Hartford.
Which is why we shouldn't be focusing so much on this derby and why we should have focused on pursuing a home playoff game.
Entirely. I'm honestly not too worried. I do think that we are a much better team than Hartford right now. I think they're doing pretty poorly. Just looking through their stats, we've got so many better players. We've got so many better players with better stats, notwithstanding last match, obviously. But if you look at their chance creation, it's much worse than ours. If you look at their goals, much worse than ours. They look like a less dynamic team. They do have a couple of, I hesitantly say, superstars. But that's it. They have a couple of standout players on a couple of matches. I'm not worried about this. I do think that we've probably rested a few too many players. Well, in fact, we haven't because we ended up subbing them on. But the original plan was probably a little too conservative.
Scott, can you explain to our listenership why teams on your side of the pond add a star to their logo?
It's usually when you've won an international trophy.
Some clubs do the domestic league though, correct? Like they'll
yes, yeah.
Right. So why the fuck does Hartford have a star?
I think they just liked it, and I think it was through some sort of aptitude test or spelling test in school that they received a star on their paper, and that's about the biggest achievement most of them have had since. So they kept it on.
Thank you for that, Scott. So always love having our Hartford expert on here. Andrew Quadros said while you were on your rant about food, love the British guy talking about food over here. Just absolutely well done. Well done. Hartford is currently, as you mentioned, they've played 21 matches. They sit 11th in the East. They have a negative 16 goal differential, 22 points. I mentioned 1 win, 1 loss, and 3 draws in the last 5 out. Are you at all worried about this one, Ryan?
Not worried per se. I mean, like Scott said, we are the better team than them, especially if we do play the way we have over the past 2 months or so. But at the same time, I again just think the decision making leading up to the match, I just think could just be a huge egg on the face moment by the team if we don't go out there and put on a performance, really. So, do I think the boys will get it done? Yes. Am I more worried than I was 28 hours ago? Yes.
Sure. We will kick it to score predictions. So if you are in the chat, please enter your score predictions and we'll get them up on air and we'll share ours. I think this one's going to be tougher than people anticipate. I know I was looking through the Defiance score predictions on the Discord earlier, and there was 4-1s, 3-1s, 5-0, and I think that's a lot of wishful thinking. I think this rotation didn't help, and it's going to kind of rear its ugly head a little bit later. Like Kevin has his 16-1 RIFC score prediction. Nate's got a 2-1 in the chat. I think this one's pretty low scoring. I think all derbies tend to be, and whether that's from the pressure that the clubs put on them, the fans put on them. Obviously, this is new, and like I said, I'm not fully buying into the way that it's being, the production around it and how it's being sold and being prioritized. I will refuse to call it El Clamico. I think I said it last time. I'm waiting for something memorable to happen. I believe that derbies are born, rivalries are born. They're not forced. So I think it'll get there unless, like Scott mentioned, this team folds and goes away like other things do in Hartford. But I'm refusing to call it that. I'm refusing to give it any kind of extra special name. I want to beat them because I want to win every match. So I'm not going to, prioritize it over others. I want to see this team win every match. But I do think derbies are a little bit tougher. Andrew Quadros has a 2-2 draw. Don't kill me. Coach has 2-1. It'll be close. Hopefully they go back to a 3-3-4. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes on. Matt disagrees with me. I don't care. You can disagree with me all you want. That's why we do this. But I think things need to happen to take shape and to kind of form this. There was no. They stole our banner. That was the best thing that happened, I think, at the away match. And, that type of event kind of leads to it. So I'm actually in the camp that they should have been allowed to bring their banner in. How do you get your get back if you can't take it back? I think not allowing them to bring their stuff in kind of puts a damper on trying to build that rivalry, at least in stadium. It's got bad optics, at least in my opinion. So I think prioritizing it so heavily from a squad perspective, but then not as a both team atmosphere perspective, it doesn't balance. It doesn't match up to me. So any other thoughts you guys have ahead of this one?
I'd like to know sort of more broadly, and no, I'm taking it back slightly, but out of the last 2 games and the upcoming one against Hartford, what would you have settled for? How many points would you have settled for? Because for me, it's 7. I wanted two wins and a draw. And
I think that's exactly what, I don't know if I said it to Ryan off air last episode or on the DC episode. I said, I think looking at the DC, Indy, and Hartford matches, it was 7 points. It was 2 wins and a draw. I looked at Detroit as the draw. So the fact that we dropped points in Indy, and I think it was drop points. There's no other way to say it. It's drop points, and it's not okay to do that because of the way it was approached.
Yeah, I mean, Matt and I, again, whenever we have this conversation, I don't know when we're being recorded and not recorded at this point in my life. It's all blurring together. But I also said 7, but then I had a moment of like reflection. And I'm like, if you would have asked me maybe even a month ago and just like wrote all those matches on paper, I probably would have said 4. Or so, because I would have said, hey, going to Detroit and going to Indy will be tough. Obviously, this was before Indy went on this absolutely horrible stretch when Indy was kind of flat for Detroit was kind of flat for a bit. Obviously, I've always thought of Hartford at home being a win there. But yeah, I think 7 is what I would have said last week. But I actually was like, wait, is that even like realistic? Would I have settled for 4 or even 5 from this actually? Which, and again, now we put ourselves in a place where we have to hope for 4. So, yeah, just overall, poorly managed.
Yeah, I think the form is the reason why most people would have said 7. And
Yeah.
obviously you have to take
I said that
take
too. I
into
totally get it.
Yeah, you have to take that into consideration. But I think that's everything we have to say ahead of that one. Just be on the lookout. We might be doing some parking lot content before the game, for the tailgate. So track us
Wait,
down.
Matt, did you give your score prediction?
I didn't yet. None of us did. I was going to go to us yet. So, be on the lookout for us in the parking lot. We'll try to do some. We'll try to set our Club Collector app, react to the lineup, almost like a mini version of our live show, but live from the tailgate. And we'd love to get as many fans and people on it as we can. So if you see us in the lot ahead of that one, come say hi. Check out what we're doing. Hopefully we can get you on. We've got a pretty cool flag that we'll have on display. It was kind of teased in the background when we went to Wide's view. So if you scroll back and look through it, you might see some, a snippet of that. Sarah's saying Matt Hands will have Jello shots. So pop a Jello shot with Matt Hands and give him a big old hug. Guy loves hugs.
Matt, I also heard a rumor there might be some Providence beer hanging around.
Yeah, we've got some gold hanging around. So maybe you're there early enough to grab some from us. Maybe you're not. It depends on how thirsty Ryan is. He's a real fiend. But Scott, we'll start with you. What do you got for your score prediction on this one? How do you see the first home derby playing out?
I don't like to rely on this sort of simplistic sort of pop sports psychology, but I do think we've just been kicked in the ribs, and I would like to hope that we're going to bounce back with a bit of gusto. I'd like to hope that there's a bit of a hairdryer treatment having gone on in the changing room after last match, and I hope that there are a few players who are now keen to prove themselves against, let's face it, a pretty feeble opposition. This is the chance that you'd like to have. You'd like to face Hartford, who are second from bottom with minus 16 goal difference, in your attempt to sort of climb back into the team or get in the coach's good graces. So I'm going to say 3-1, actually.
All right. Ryan, how about you?
I was also going to go to 3-1 as well. They're just a team that they just do not defend. I could see us getting up 1-0 and then them clawing one back through counterattack. That is like kind of one of the only things that they do even decently well. But I could see us kind of coming out with a little fire in the second half. My one concern I just remembered is that Frank Nodarse did go out with the concussion protocol at the end of the match. So if he is unable to go on Saturday, I do think that is a big blow to us. But I will stick to 3-1 as well.
You mentioned their ability to score on the counter, and whether it's Nodarse, I think that's one of his weaker points is defending on the counter. So I think that I have that as a big area of concern as well. I'm kind of with Andrew Quadros, although I've got a little bit of a different score. I see this one ending in a draw. I think the heavy rotation midweek puts a damper on things that we saw. I've got an exact repeat of last time out. I've got a 1-1. We know form goes out the window when it's derbies, when it's local stuff. It's a little bit
I didn't realize we had form.
Yeah, it's a little bit squeaky bum for both teams, and I think there's an added pressure, whether it's from the clubs or the supporters groups. So I think this one plays tight. I think it's 1-1. I hope I'm wrong. I'd love to see the win. I thought maybe a 1-1 with the weather would have been, pretty fair, but it's looking like it's going to be pretty nice. It'll be interesting to see how well the drainage works at Bern. I think we are still supposed to get a good amount of rain overnight tomorrow night. So interesting to see how that plays out. But there's just too many questions based on that rotation and how things have been playing. And I've got it at 1-1 for me. And I hate to be the downer on that one, but
yeah,
that's what I came up with.
Just to add a bit more meat behind my optimism, one reason I am is I think the kind of starting 11 that we've seen so far can almost wipe their hands clean a bit of last night and say, yeah, that wasn't us. We got this now. And like I said, the ones who did come on, I think they did show a bit of that confidence and that gusto to try to make something happen. So I'm hoping they can carry that energy rather than like the bad feelings going into it. I do hope the team does recognize like, hey, we did drop some points in Indy. We left some points on the board there. Let's go get them back. At the same time, I think Coach Almeida is saying it right. Like I don't think it's going to be a lack of will, a lack of energy. It's definitely going to be chippy there on Saturday. So yeah, we'll see. But I do think that there are goals to be had.
Yeah, I hope so. And I hope they come for the boys in blue. And just remember, they're trying to do a blue out. So if you are grabbing your amber road kit, don't do it. Try to go with the home kit or go with the blue t-shirt.
That's going to be so disappointed in that.
I picked up the last night with the team's official watch party there. I picked up the Beat Hartford shirt for the game. hopefully, and that helps my prediction be wrong. But Scott, any final thoughts before we sign off? Before we put a pin in this one?
Hartford's manager's a bit of a buck.
Wait, a what?
A buck. It's a British insult, but his last name is also Buck.
Oh,
All right. So he's
Just a
double
small
entendre
pun
there.
to tide you over.
Oh,
oh boy, jeez.
I know. It just gets worse.
very nice. Ryan, any thoughts for you?
My RIFC in 3 was just beat Hartford. That's all that matters now. Win the next game, get the form back on track. We had some gripes, we had some frustrations with what happened last night, but at the same time, go make it right on Saturday. Go put on performance and give the fans what they are hoping for.
For sure. Like I mentioned, we're gonna try to do some pregame content, so find us there. Make sure you come say hi, grab a beer or two if we have them left over. And just hopefully we can have a good showing. I know they mentioned in the Defiance monthly meeting that the porta potties over near the North Bleachers is going to be the potential crossover spot. So if you see a Hartford fan walk into a porta potty, go shake it like crazy. That's just the way to do it. But that'll wrap things up for this one. I do want to, again, like Ryan said, thank Providence Brewing for their hospitality with us. That was not the last live show. We will be back before the season is over. So if you're not following us on the socials, make sure you do, as we're looking to do that again. And it's a really cool partnership. There's something really special brewing over there. I keep saying it, the pun fully intended. They're just great people over there, and we love working with them. So we want to continue it as much as possible. I know a couple different people came and took the time to join us last night too. So it was great meeting some new people, great interacting with people from the club, and excited to do it again, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, just reiterate everything you said. And like we kept reiterating last night, please tip your bartenders as always.
That's it. And hopefully we can have Scott over for one of the live shows at Providence Brewing too. Make it all happen. Make it all work. But that'll wrap things up.
Well, the only problem is their beer's cold, and I know Scott is not a fan of that. So
that's right.
He'll make it.
We can have him leave a couple cases out the night before. That'll wrap things up for this one. Remember, Tide Talk is more than just a podcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for daily social media content. Click the link in this episode description to follow all of our accounts. I've been your host, Matt. For Scott and Ryan, thanks again for joining. Come hang with us at the parking lot, at the tailgate, and get your face on camera and give us your score predictions and set your Club Collector app ahead of that one. We'll see you next time. And as always, up the Tide.
Up the Tide.
Up the Tide. Beat Hartford.